Joining us to respond to that is
the
Ann
woman
Coulter.
that Trump doesn't know, Ann Coulter.
Good morning.
Thank God he's relieved me of any responsibility for what he's been doing.
Well, let's discuss.
That was the biggest favor anyone could do to me today.
Let's discuss why. Because you've been...
The country's over, that's why.
Uh-oh, I saw that tweet that you put out
Hope
there.
you're enjoying having a radio show. Actually, your radio show can keep going because you barely talk about politics. There's really no point.
Exactly.
In anybody else talking about this. It's just fooling the rubes with the national emergency. Oh, and I noticed I just woke up before to call into your show.
Wait, you didn't see the press conference live? You didn't hear him say you?
No, I just heard that for the first time.
Oh my God.
But I checked to make sure that I was right. Didn't take a lot of, I didn't have to go to a tarot card reader to figure out, is the president going to totally F over his base? Went to sleep last night thinking, yes, I think the answer is yes. I mean, more than any other presidential mandate in the history of the nation, Trump's mandate was to build a wall. Other presidents who allegedly, and, to some extent did have mandates, LBJ not to get the country blown up, or FDR not to be Hoover and create Hooverville, to do something about the Depression. But it wasn't for, one specific policy, but moreover, any other president, Ronald Reagan, get the hostages home, win the Cold War, stop backing down to the Soviet Union. These are mandates. But it was also, this is someone we trust as a competent man to run the government. This is a decent person who ought to be the commander-in-chief. Okay, none of that was true with Trump. No one thought, oh, yeah, look, he was governor of the biggest state in the union. He used to run the CIA. He was Reagan's vice president. He was, he was FDR's. No, it was one thing, the promise he made every single day at every single speech.
Yeah.
So forget the fact that he's digging his own grave. This is just, look, the only national emergency is that our president is an idiot.
Well, you get no argument here.
Now, breaking on KABC.
What do you think is going to happen with this money that he thinks he's going to be able to get by declaring this an emergency? Is it going to be blocked in the courts and he's just never going to get it done and now he can blame the courts?
I think that's what he and Jared and Ivanka and the rest of the dream team are hoping, because for some reason he really doesn't want to build a wall. Incidentally, he is not incompetent and an imbecile on every single issue. And I think it's worth saying this. Perhaps I'll write it up next week. My last column. Just kidding. I'm going to spend the rest of my columns denouncing the president, for the rest of my life. But in defense of Trump supporters and those of us who fell for his BS, so, don't get on your high horse, Jillian. Look, Trump has been perfectly competent at a much more complicated subject, the judiciary. Donald Trump, until Brett Kavanaugh was presented to Donald Trump, he didn't know Brett Kavanaugh walked the earth. I promise you, to this day, he has not read one word of any Supreme Court decision, and yet his judicial selections, what does he do? What we expected him to do on the central reason he is president, immigration, farm it out to people who know what they're doing. Thus, I again, deeply, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank the president for saying we haven't talked for a year, because he wasn't listening to me basically from November 8th until then. But, he turns it over to the Federal Society. This is why my first two columns right after Trump was elected were somewhat hysterical, warning what was coming and hoping I was wrong, when he didn't make Chris Kobach head of Homeland Security and made that daft woman who's a special friend of General Kelly's. Where's Kirsten Nielsen on this? This is the biggest immigration. This is the worst open borders the country has ever had under the president who ran against open borders. And as for the national emergency that he declared today, specifically, number one, as my assiduous readers and fans know, since November 8th, and actually before then in Trump, we chose one of the wonderful things about Trump the campaigner as opposed to Trump turning everything over to Jared Kushner as president is most of his main campaign promises, and of course the biggest ones having to do with immigration, are all things that are 100% within the authority of the president. No, he never needed Congress to build a wall. He could have started building day one. And I've been saying that since before the election and immediately after the election. Renegotiating trade deals, 100% his responsibility. Deciding not to continue wars, pointless wars in Afghanistan and Syria, and apparently, about a dozen other countries in the world that most Americans don't even know we're at war at. This was the guy who said, "Why are we killing the best Americans? Iraq was a scam. Let's pull out." Has any of that happened? When he needed your votes before